Mutilation and pain are necessary to Palo Mayombe rituals, especially when it came to the devil Adolfo highly coveted. The demons he served were likely to be happier by a sacrifice that died in agony. He told his followers they must die screaming. Rival narcotics dealers kidnapped Ovidio Hernandez and his 2-year-old son on August 10, 1988, in revenge after they were swindled out of $800,000. In response, Adolfo's followers kidnapped a stranger 2 days later, torturing him to death at their headquarters, chanting prayers for the safe release of Hernandez and his son. On August 13th, the hostages were released, with Adolfo taking full credit for their return. In November 1988, ex-cop and cult member Jorge Valente Gomez violated the cult's ban on using drugs. Adolfo had to make an example of the disobedient 35-year-old, as he became the next sacrifice. On February 14, 1989, a competing smuggler named Ezequiel Rodriguez Luna was tortured to death at the ranch, along with 2 other dealers who accidentally wandered into the ceremony uninvited. 9 days after this, the cult kidnapped another stranger who was never identified. This stranger put up quite the fight, as Adolfo ordered Elio to shoot him without the customary rituals. Then on February 25th, the cult kidnapped Jose Garcia, which was considered to be an accident as they soon found out that he was Elio's 14-year-old cousin. Unfortunately, they did not realize the mistake until it was too late. At the same time of these rituals, Adolfo was in possession of 800 kilos of marijuana, which was stolen from another gang. Instead of bringing it to the border, he felt he needed one more sacrifice to guarantee a safe shipment across the Rio Grande. On March 13, 1989, another ritual was performed. But the victim's suffering wasn't enough for Adolfo's taste. He told his followers, "Bring me someone I can use, someone who will scream." The next morning, they brought him Mark Kilroy. After the sacrificial ritual performed with Mark Kilroy, Adolfo was stunned by the public's outcry of his disappearance. Apparently, his psychic abilities failed him when it came to this. He was in shock. Not even the Calzata family massacre produced such a commotion. But Mark Kilroy was definitely different when it came to Adolfo's victims. He came from an affluent family with political connections. And he was a Caucasian American male whose disappearance could potentially become international news. Adolfo was still in possession of the 800 kilos that he needed to move across the border. Even with the 2 previous sacrifices, he still felt he needed to perform one more sacrifice. On March 28, 1989, Gilberto Sosa, Sarah Eldrite's former lover, was chosen as the next victim and died screaming. He then safely transported the goods on April 8th, collecting $300,000. He was able to do this despite Serafin Hernandez leading authorities to the ranch 1 week earlier. But El Padrino would not see a single penny, as the 4 members who collected the payment were arrested on April 9th, before they were able to give the leader the cash. In the meantime, Serafin Hernandez identified Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo as the leader of the cult who ordered the sacrificial rituals. He also stated that El Padrino tortured and sodomized the victims before killing them and using their organs for his cauldron. Authorities returned to the ranch with Serafin, who pointed out the cult's private graveyard. They had dug up 12 bodies, which were buried in a perfect row. All of the victims were men who were either shot at close range or hacked to death with a machete. One of the bodies Serafin dug up was Mark Kilroy. His skull was split open and his brain missing. Investigators entered a shed on the property and discovered Adolfo's cast iron kettle filled with blood, animal remains, and 28 sticks. The followers explained the sticks were used to communicate with the spirits in the afterlife. The cauldron was teeming with spiders, scorpions, and other items that could not be identified. Among these items was Mark's brain. Over the next 6 days, 15 more victims were discovered in the cemetery, with 3 more near an orchard. Adolfo knew he was in trouble, so he ran. Sara Algite, Martin Quintana, Omar Oria, and Alvaro de Leon Valdez, who was a Hernandez family hitman, ran to Mexico City. They had every intention of going to Miami, but the DEA figured Adolfo would run home to his mom. So he was left with no choice but to remain in Mexico City, constantly moving from one of his followers' homes to the next. The media had a field day with this case, with Geraldo Rivera airing a special primetime segment on the case. And TV journalists came flying in from the United States and Europe and Japan, just all countries. All of these journalists were coming from all of these countries to get the latest scoop. Adolfo was said to have been sighted in Chicago, with rumors spreading that he was in league with the mafia. Sara was also supportedly seen lurking around schools throughout the Rio Grande Valley, with people claiming she had threatened to kidnap and murder 10 Anglo children for each of her disciples jailed in Mexico. A church was even burned down in Pharr, Texas, after rumors spread that its congregants were witches enslaved to Adolfo. With all of these conflicting rumors, authorities continued searching the border for Adolfo and his posse. Upon Serafin Hernandez Rivera's arrest, they searched the house he had been hiding in, where they found weapons and cash, but they did not find any occult paraphernalia. On April 18th, 1989, Adolfo read betrayal in his tarot cards. This caused him to look more closely at his friends. Weary of those around him, he kept an Uzi close and slept for no more than a few minutes. He also threatened those around him. They cannot kill you, but I can, as he assumed more power than that of authorities. On April 22nd, arsonists struck in the middle of the night at Rancho Santa Elena, burning down Adolfo's ritual shed. The next morning, footage of the smoldering ashes was displayed on television, throwing El Padrino into a rage. His anger was further fueled by the image of police conducting an exorcism at the ranch and sprinkling holy water over the graves. He stormed through the apartment, smashing lamps and overturning furniture. 2 days later, authorities arrested cultist Jorge Montes and raided his home. Just like those arrested before him, Jorge divulged everything he knew about the cult, naming Adolfo as the mastermind and executioner in all of the homicides. On April 27th, Adolfo and his 4 remaining followers moved into an apartment house on Rio Sina in Mexico City. Sara started to fear for her life and decided to write a note on May 2nd, tossing it from the bedroom window in hopes someone would find it in the street. The note read, "Please call the judicial police and tell them that in this building are those they are seeking. Tell them that a woman is being held hostage. I beg for this because what I want most is to talk, or they're going to kill the girl." Someone happened to find the note and read it, but they kept the note and its contents to himself, believing that it was someone's attempt at some form of humor. Little did that passerby know that upstairs, in that apartment, Adolfo was formulating plans, most likely to flee Mexico, with his 4 most trusted followers, telling them they'll never take me. But those plans would never be realized, as on May 6th, 1989, authorities arrived at Rio Sina, going door to door to ask questions. Authorities were there for a completely unrelated case. But once Adolfo caught a glimpse of the police from a window, he immediately panicked and opened fire with his Uzi. Within a matter of minutes, 180 policemen surrounded the apartment, returning gunfire for at least 45 minutes. Adolfo soon realized there was no escape. When he came to terms with this, he handed his weapon to Alvaro, instructing him to kill him and Martin. The hitman refused, stating he couldn't do that. But Adolfo hit him in the face and threatened that everything would go bad for him in hell. He then hugged Martin, and Alvaro shot them. By the time authorities stormed into the apartment, Adolfo and Martin were dead, slumped together in a closet. Alvaro, Sarah, and Omar were then arrested and sent to jail. Alvaro admitted killing Adolfo while in custody, but he joyfully informed police the Godfather will not be dead for long. Authorities did not take Adolfo's resurrection seriously and only concerned themselves with making the charges stick against the 3 survivors. Alvaro's case was pretty easy since they had his confession of killing Martin and Adolfo recorded. As for Sarah, things were a little more complicated. At first, she posed as a victim. However, she betrayed herself when she revealed intimate details of the cult's rituals. Following the Mexico City shootout, 14 cult members were indicted. The charges varied from multiple murders, weapons and narcotics violations, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. In August 1990, Alvaro was convicted of killing Adolfo and Martin and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Juan Fragoso and Jorge Montes were convicted of Raul Esquivel's murder and each sentenced to 35 years. Omar Oria was convicted in the same case. However, he died from AIDS before he could be sentenced. Sarah was acquitted of Adolfo's killing in 1990, but was sentenced to a 6-year jail sentence on the conviction of criminal association. She claimed that she never practiced any religion besides Christianity and was shocked by the televised reports of the murders that occurred at Rancho Santa Elena. However, jurors were not convinced of her innocence. In 1994, Sarah and 4 male accomplices were convicted of multiple slayings at the ranch. Sarah was sentenced to 62 years, while the others received 67 years. In the meantime, American authorities stand by, ready to prosecute Sarah, Alvaro, and the Hernandez family for Mark Kilroy's murder if they should ever be released. While several cult members were arrested, some speculate that the cult was 10 to 15 times larger than originally thought. If this is true, then many have yet to receive punishment for their actions. And probably more scary yet, they could still be practicing and killing people. So what did you think of today's case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening and your support. Stay safe and I will see you for the next episode. Bye.